The Chymical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. This text has no copyright and is a public domain mystical text like the Bible. The original text was written in Old German and limitedly available in 1616, and then this version was directly quoted from a surviving 1690 English translation. This book represents the original English translation by Ezekiel Foxcroft from 1690, verbatim. Keep note that this was the first and oldest English copy known to exist, and that there were later translations, such as an official Rosicrucian translation from 1923, a scholarly esoteric 1970s translation with footnotes, and then a certain author penned two versions, a 1984 and 91 translation with deep dive.
The first day in an evening before Easter Day, I sat at a table, and having, as my custom was, in my humble prayer, sufficiently conversed with my Creator, and considered many great mysteries, whereof the Father of Lights, His Majesty had shown me not a few, and being now ready to prepare in my heart, together with my dear Pascal Lamb, a small, unleavened, undefiled cake, all of a sudden arose so horrible a tempest, that I imagined no other but that through its mighty force, the hill on which my little house was founded would fly into pieces. But inasmuch as this, and the like from the devil, who had done me many a spite, was no new thing to me, I took courage and persisted in my meditation, till somebody in an unusual manner touched me on the back, whereupon I was so hugely terrified that I dared hardly look about me. Yet I showed myself as cheerful as, in such occurrences, human frailty would permit. Now the same thing still twitching me several times by the coat, I looked back, and behold it was a fair and glorious lady, whose garments were all sky-colored, and curiously, like heaven, bespangled with golden stars. In her right hand she bore a trumpet of beaten gold, on which a name was engraved which I could well read, but am as yet forbidden to reveal it. In her left hand she had a great bundle of letters of all languages, which she, as I afterwards understood, was to carry to all countries. She also had large and beautiful wings, full of eyes throughout, with which she could mount aloft, and fly swifter than any eagle. I might perhaps have been able to take further notice of her, but because she stayed so little time with me, and terror and amazement still possessed me, I had to be content. For as soon as I turned about, she turned her letters over and over, and at length drew out a small one, which with great reverence she laid down upon the table, and without giving one word, departed from me. But in her mounting upward, she gave so mighty a blast on her gallant trumpet, that the whole hill echoed from it, and for a full quarter of an hour after, I could hardly hear my own words. In so unlooked for an adventure I was at a loss, how either to advise or to assist my poor self, and therefore fell upon my knees and besought my Creator to permit nothing contrary to my eternal happiness to befall me. Whereupon, with fear and trembling, I went to the letter, which was now so heavy that had it been mere gold, it could hardly have been so weighty. Now, as I was diligently viewing it, I found a little seal, on which a curious cross with this inscription, in hoc signo vinces, was engraved.
On the eve of Easter, Christian Rosenkreutz engages in deep prayer and contemplation, a meditation considering the divine mysteries revealed to him. Suddenly, a violent storm breaks out. It is a manifestation he attributes to the devil's interference with him, which he has encountered times before. Amidst his meditation, he is startled by a touch on the back, turning to see a majestic lady, adorned in sky-colored, star-bespangled garments, carrying a golden trumpet and a bundle of letters destined for all nations. This celestial figure, equipped with eye-covered wings for swift flight, briefly interacts with Rosencreutz by placing a significant letter on his table before departing with a resonant trumpet blast that echoes across the hill. Overwhelmed by this encounter, Rosencreutz prays for divine protection and approaches the mysteriously heavy letter with reverence, discovering a seal bearing a cross and the motto in hoc signo vinces, meaning, in this sign, you will conquer. This page sets a mystical and spiritual tone, introducing the reader to the supernatural and symbolic elements that will permeate the narrative. The visitation by the angelic figure symbolizes a divine invitation or call to a spiritual journey, hinted at by the trumpet and the significant letter. The presence of the cross and the inscription on the seal suggests that this journey will involve victory through faith or spiritual conquest, setting the stage for the esoteric themes that the Chymical Wedding explores. This messenger from the Creator signifies a sudden start into spiritual awakening and further enlightenment.
Now as soon as I espied this sign, I was the more comforted, as not being ignorant that such a seal was little acceptable, and much less useful, to the devil. Whereupon I tenderly opened the letter, and within it, in an azure field, in golden letters, found the following verses written: This day, today, is the royal wedding day. For this thou wast born, and chosen of God for joy. Thou mayest go to the mountain, whereon 3 temples stand, and see there this affair. Keep watch, inspect thyself, and shouldst thou not bathe thoroughly, the wedding may work thy bane. Bane comes to him who faileth here, let him beware who is too light. Below was written Sponsus and Sponsor. As soon as I had read this letter, I was presently like to have fainted away. All my hair stood on end, and a cold sweat tricked down my whole body. For although I well perceived that this was the appointed wedding, of which 7 years before I was acquainted in a bodily vision, and which now for so long a time I had with great earnestness awaited, and which lastly, by the account and calculation of the planets, I had most diligently observed, I found so to be, yet could I never foresee that it must happen under such grievous perilous conditions. For whereas I before imagined that to be a welcome and acceptable guest, I needed only to be ready to appear at the wedding, I was now directed to divine providence, of which until this time I was never certain. I also found by myself, the more I examined myself, that in my head there was nothing but gross misunderstanding and blindness in mysterious things, so that I was not able to comprehend even those things which lay under my feet, and which I daily conversed with, much less that I should be born to the searching out and understanding of the secrets of nature, since in my opinion nature might everywhere find a more virtuous disciple, to whom to entrust her precious, though temporary and changeable treasures.
In the second page of The Chymical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, Christian receives a letter that both exhilarates and terrifies him. The letter, marked with a sign indicating divine protection, contains verses inviting him to a royal wedding, affirming it as his divine calling. The invitation not only summons him to a mountain with 3 temples, but also warns of the serious conditions attached. He must thoroughly inspect and purify himself, or face ruin. Initially thrilled, recognizing the event as the celestial wedding he had foreseen and awaited, Christian's excitement quickly turns to anxiety upon realizing the perilous stipulations involved. He understands that mere attendance isn't enough. He must achieve a state of spiritual purity, guided by divine providence, a concept he now acknowledges he had never fully grasped. As Christian reflects on his own preparedness, he confronts profound doubts about his worthiness and intellectual capacity to uncover and comprehend the mysteries of nature. Despite his aspirations and efforts to understand the esoteric, he is plagued by a sense of inadequacy, questioning his ability to grasp even the simplest, everyday phenomena, much less the complex secrets he seeks. This self-scrutiny reveals his humility and perceived limitations, positioning him as perhaps an unworthy disciple of nature's secrets. This passage not only deepens the themes of divine destiny and spiritual purification, but also portrays Christian's inner turmoil and transformation as he embarks on his quest for enlightenment, embodying the alchemical process of refining the base self into a spiritually elevated state.
I found also that my bodily behaviour and outward good conversation and brotherly love towards my neighbour was not duly purged and cleansed. Moreover, the tickling of the flesh manifested itself, whose affection was bent only to pomp and bravery and worldly pride, and not to the good of mankind. And I was always contriving how by this art I might in a short time abundantly increase my profit and advantage, rear up stately palaces, make myself an everlasting name in the world, and other similar carnal designs. But the obscure words concerning the 3 temples particularly afflicted me, which I was not able to make out by any after speculation, and perhaps should not have done so yet, had they not been wonderfully revealed to me. Thus stuck between hope and fear, examining myself again and again, and finding only my own frailty and impotence, not being in any way able to succour myself, and exceedingly amazed at the forementioned threatening, at length I betook myself to my usual and most secure course. After I had finished my earnest and most fervent prayer, I laid myself down in my bed, so that perchance my good angel by the divine permission might appear, and, as it had sometimes formerly happened, instruct me in this doubtful affair, which to the praise of God, my own good, and my neighbour's faithful and hearty warning and amendment, did now likewise come about. For I was yet scarcely fallen asleep, when I thought that I, together with an innumerable multitude of men, lay fettered with great chains in a dark dungeon, in which without the least glimpse of light we swarmed like bees one over another, and thus rendered each other's affliction more grievous. But although neither I nor any of the rest could see one jot, yet I continually heard one heaving himself above the other, when his chains and fetters had become ever so slightly lighter, though none of us had much reason to shove up above the other, since we were all captive wretches. Now when I with the rest had continued a good while in this affliction, and each was still reproaching the other with his blindness and captivity, at length we heard many trumpets sounding together, and kettle drums beating in such a masterly fashion, that it even revived us in our calamity and made us rejoice. During this noise the cover of the dungeon was lifted up from above, and a little light let down to us. Then first might truly have been discerned the bustle we kept, for all went pell-mell, and he who perchance had heaved himself up too much was forced down again under the other's feet. In brief, each one strove to be uppermost.
In the 3rd page of The Chymical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, Christian delves deeper into his personal shortcomings and spiritual unpreparedness, revealing an inner conflict between his spiritual aspirations and worldly desires. He confesses that his outward behaviors and intentions are not as pure as they seem, dominated by self-serving thoughts and materialistic ambitions, such as increasing his wealth, building grand palaces, and seeking fame. This candid self-assessment highlights a common human tendency to focus on external achievements and personal gain rather than genuine altruism and spiritual growth. Christian is particularly troubled by cryptic references to 3 temples in his invitation, which remain a mystery to him, adding to his anxiety and sense of inadequacy. His inability to decipher these symbols on his own leads him to rely on divine intervention, hoping for clarity and guidance through prayer, a recurring theme that underscores his dependency on spiritual enlightenment over worldly wisdom. As he seeks answers through sleep, Christian experiences a vivid dream where he, along with countless others, is trapped in a dark, oppressive dungeon, symbolizing the entrapment of humanity in ignorance and materialism. This collective suffering is momentarily relieved by the sound of trumpets and the beating of drums, suggesting divine or royal intervention, which brings a glimmer of hope and light into their dismal condition. The scenario becomes chaotic as everyone struggles to rise above others, illustrating the human condition's competitive and often selfish nature. Christian's narrative in this dream serves as a metaphor for the spiritual awakening process, where enlightenment comes not just from seeking to rise above others, but from a collective uplifting. This allegorical vision reinforces the profound message of the Chymical Wedding, that true liberation and understanding are achieved through spiritual insight and communal betterment, rather than individual conquest. As the light descends and the cover of the dungeon is lifted, the revelation that unfolds is not just personal, but communal, suggesting that enlightenment is a shared journey, not a solitary quest